Welcome to this episode of the Profitable Home Services Podcast. This is the podcast where we dig deep into the profit and the cash flow leaks in your business. We're talking those hidden profit leaks, not the ones that sit on your P&L, but the ones that are lurking in the shadows of your business. We're so glad to have you joining us on our program today. And today our guest is Chris Crew from the Blue Collar Success Group. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. Let me tell our listeners about you. Chris joined the Blue Collar Success Group in early 2018 as a success coach, and then he has since offered extensive knowledge about every facet of the in-home services, from pricing, planning, budgeting, marketing, recruiting, training, and showing clients how they can transform their businesses into revenue generators. His journey through the industry began at age 16 as an apprentice electrician, and after just 8 months was prompted to lead technician. It was the tipping point for what would be his vast resume as a successful owner, supervisor, and business coach. In 2005, Chris joined a residential electrical company in Atlanta and was quickly promoted to a supervisor responsible for 18 trucks and producing more than $4 million in revenue. He moved on to Sarasota, Florida in 2008, and there he served as a business coach for a large electrical company, helping franchisees achieve success like the $1 Million Award he won in Georgia for producing $1.4 million in revenue. From 2010 to 2012, he coached various electrical and HVAC businesses for the franchisor and eventually oversaw the coaching team for more than 90 locations nationwide. He got bored and then he shifted to owning an electrical business, growing the company in a 4-year span from 10 trucks to 60, 5 locations, and generating $18 million. Chris ultimately sold his shares of the company to join the Blue Collar Success Group. Wow, that's quite a bio. Thank you, Chris, for coming on our program.
Thank you, Diane. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to join your listeners today.
Well, I will confess that I grew up as the daughter of an electrician.
Okay.
My dad was so disappointed when I did not want to get my electrical license.
Interesting.
And he kind of laughed today. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, most people, I always explain to them the way the industry works: either you choose it or it chooses you.
Mm-hmm.
And some people choose not to choose the industry as a whole, right? It can come with some, of course, when I was young, when I was 16 years old, everybody was, let's go to college, let's go to college. And I'm very, very grateful for the experience that I've got and the education that I've got just through the school of doing and being around very smart people.
And I think that education is probably worth more than the college degree would have been for you.
And Diane, I'm not sure what the amount of money you would have to pay to go get the amount of education that I have had to get. If you could quantify and put a number to it, it'd be very difficult.
Yeah. Well, I always like to say that I came back into this area in a very roundabout way, working as an accountant for all these years and now working really hard as a profit strategist so that we can help businesses out there in that home services industry, find those profits, because they're just leaking out. I picture the picture of a bucket with just water just gushing out of it, and they don't even know it because they're so busy trying to get the jobs done, trying to build a team, trying to keep that top line revenue where everybody says they need to have it, that there's nothing left for the profit side of the business. And so today I'd like to pick your brain and see if we can come up with some hidden profit leaks that we can talk about and open their eyes to go look in these places, guys, because I know that there's profit leaks hiding there.
Interesting enough, Diane, you mentioned that. I have 2 sayings. Number one is contractors get caught up in what we call top line intoxication. What I mean by top line intoxication is, look at how much revenue I'm doing. Look at how much revenue I'm doing. I'm not so concerned with how much revenue I'm doing. What I'm more concerned with is how much money I'm actually making. And this is a conversation that's very near and dear to my heart because of that. Contractors running on very slim margins don't allow for the opportunity to generate a nice, strong, healthy bottom line, which goes back to my next point, which is sales will cover up a multitude of sins if a business has them, right? It'll
Definitely.
cover them up, because as long as we're making money to some extent at the bottom, we're okay with it. So one of the things that me and my partner did early on was we focused more on revenue, knowing that we had the profit leaks, but it was a very planned strategy. And once we hit the tipping point of revenue, then it was time to focus on profits. I don't recommend that for your listeners, by the way. It's too calculated of a risk, but I bet on myself and bet on my partner that we would be able to actually go execute the plan. But during that time of growing the business, we learned a lot of things of where the profit was, because to your point, Diane, once we got our number, the revenue number to the number, we said, okay, great. Now let's drive a 20+% net profit to the bottom line. That means some serious dollars that, you're putting in the bank. So I could share with you just conversation after conversation about things that we did to help improve the bottom line.
Nothing makes me more sad than to see a plumber, an electrician, an HVAC guy, whatever it might be, roofer, working their tails off, and they finally hit, maybe it's 5 million or 10 or 15, whatever that magic number is. But when you look at the bottom line, there's not even maybe 100,000 sitting down there. And that just breaks my heart when I see that, because I know how hard they're working.
The big thing though, Diane, and we try to explain this as well, in what we do, most contractors and business owners confuse profits with cash.
They do.
And those two things are not the same. And that's the reason why a lot of times most business owners try to operate the business by the checkbook. And that's even more dangerous, right? Not if you don't have proper cash flow statements to run the business by, not understanding what the outlying of cash actually is. So it can be very, very dangerous. Business is very risky if you don't understand which levers to pull and which knobs to dial.
And sometimes it's a combination of pull multiples at one time, or don't touch it, back off. And it's hard to know when to do both of those.
Exactly.
Chris, let's talk a little bit about probably their most expensive cost on their P&L is their people.
100% in most service businesses, from a KPI standpoint, should be around 30%, not loaded, by the way. That doesn't include wages. It's just literally just wages, no benefits, no taxes, around 30%. We see in most businesses that number is around 35 to 40. Businesses that have profit challenges are around that.
Yeah. I see it all the time, sometimes even 45. And I'm looking at and going, you guys are leaking profits out because of your team, which means we need to drill down and find out what's going on in that team. Do they have high turnover? Are they inefficient? Do they not have systems and processes in place? What is causing that 40-45% instead of a much nicer 30 or even 35?
Broken compensation plans. Most contractors and business owners pay their team members based on either some way that they were paid when they were in the field and in that position, and they said, hey, I think this works, but if you don't know everything behind it, it doesn't. And or they adopted some form of compensation plan from someone else. I'll share this story. One of our clients had labor challenges, got on site at his business, and I said, Tim, do me a favor, show me the sheet in which you calculate the compensation and the payroll. He handed it to me, and within probably about 10 minutes, I went through it, and I found that he had overpaid that year $100,000 in compensation to his team members that he should not have paid, all because of one spreadsheet error.
Oh my goodness. That's amazing. What a big profit leak.
Yeah, literally, he said, Chris, you paid for yourself. We're just going to go eat lunch and we're just going to hang out the rest of the time you're here. He said your visit was well worth it. So it is amazing how compensation plans can be very complex. And I think a lot of times simplifying complex compensation plans can be very scary for contractors, because kind of three things you don't mess with when it comes to a team member and employee is, number one, their pay, number two is their benefits, number three is their family, right? And you mess with any of those three, you run the risk of potentially losing a team member by upsetting them. So I'm always hesitant to encourage people to start changing plans. So it's a big fear that business owners have, is even if it's a broken compensation plan, let's not mess with that. Let's go figure out something else.
Something else, yeah.
Yeah.
I know in my own program, when we run what we call our labor burden calculator program, where we actually fully burden the cost to that employee, their eyes get about this big around and they're just mortified that that person that they thought was costing them this much is really costing them this much.
Yeah,
And they're just shocked at what that true cost is when you fully burden it with all the other costs that have to be added in there.
exactly. Another good thing too, Diane, to keep an eye on as a contractor is wages to sales, right? Or wages to revenue, if that makes sense. So the revenue we generate. So if I'm talking, if I'm an HVAC business, I'm not necessarily, my installers may not be producing revenue, but they're installing revenue. And so I'm trying to look at what is the give and take. If I'm paying them X amount and this is what they're producing for me, that's another good way for businesses to also be able to look for profit leaks in their businesses to identify. It might not be the compensation plan. It might be individuals in the compensation plan are not carrying their full weight because the comp plan is not strictly built off of a give and take.
Right. I see a lot of inefficiencies in teams, especially those who don't have a good system built around it. They'll send their guys out, and if they're not tracking where the guys are going, they find them over at the local wherever drinking coffee or who knows whatever else for chunks of the day, and they're losing that time because it's not being put on a job. And that can be
Interesting
another
enough.
profit leak.
That's a whole nother conversation in
It
itself.
is.
I say this all the time, Diane. There's two things that are going on in everybody's business: what you think is going on and what's really going on. So it goes back to, we believe that you should always just inspect what you expect, and having systems in place that allows a business owner to have comfort in knowing that what is supposed to go on is actually going on. That goes back to, we live in the world of technology and vehicle tracking and fuel management. And yet, Diane, here's the crazy part. It's 2024. And I know people today whose technicians buy fuel just on a credit card.
Yes, I see it way too often. And that credit card then gets picked up with whatever other munchies and drinks and stuff they want, all land on that same credit card. And nobody catches it because in the office, they're too busy to look at every single receipt.
Well, I'll take that a step further, Diane. It goes back to sometimes people, if given the right opportunity, might not always do the right thing. What I mean by that is, we caught a guy that was actually using his gas card like normal. He filled up his work truck, set the pump down on the ground, pulled it up, and then another vehicle pulled up behind it and he put gas in that one. Yes. So it goes beyond that. And having a fleet card management that flags inconsistencies like that, if you're looking at it, once again, you got to look for it, right? It's not going to jump off the income statement and say, hey, by the way, there's a problem here. That goes back to something I believe in, which is an actual review of the P&L monthly. Like I want to be line by line reviewing the P&L two ways. Number one, by percentages of revenue, because a lot of what we do is variable expenses. Number two, a comparison to budget. What I budget for versus what did we actually do. So a lot of, and you can also do a comparative report. And so that will cause things to surface by looking at it and comparing it to different things. So as a contractor business owner, it's very, very easy to let things slip through when you're not looking.
Very easy, especially when you get real busy during your peak times in the year. And you're just not taking that time to stop and look at those reports and read them and really even understand them. I think so many of the times they don't get looked at because they don't have a full understanding. It's just a bunch of numbers to them and not really realizing how much those numbers impact you in a huge way.
Yeah, and a lot of times pride can get in the way. Like I mean that in the most humblest way, meaning like I'm running a $10 million company. I should already know how to do that. People quote think I should know how to do this. And one of the biggest things that we've learned is that all progress begins when you tell the truth, which means my business will get better when I admit there's things I don't know and I just need to go get the education. I just haven't had the opportunity to learn that yet. right? And when we sharpen the saw, the business gets better.
Definitely. And I think everybody goes into business because they're good at something. Doesn't mean you're good at everything. You're good at something. And you may be really great at throwing a roof on a building, but that doesn't mean that you know how to manage a team of 10 or 15, 20, 30 people. Doesn't mean you have those skills, and we have to build them.
Watch this, Diane. Let me paint this picture for you. For every contractor that's listening to this, it's going to make a lot of sense. Imagine that I'm a electrical, plumbing, or HVAC contractor, and I'm service-based, service only. There's two types of skill sets that you need from a service technician. You need for them to have technical skills. They need to know how to do the job. And they need to be able to have soft skills, how to sell the job. Well, the same is true in business ownership. You've got to know how to do the thing that your business delivers, which is how most of us get into business ownership. Then you actually have to know the business side of the business, right? And those are two different skill sets. Like to talk, you may be the best plumber, but you may not be a good business owner. You may be the best electrician, but not a good business owner. You may be the best HVAC technician, but not a good business owner. And it's the reason why is there are two different skill sets, just like with the service electrician, plumber, and HVAC tech. Technical skill set and soft skills are two totally different things. Doesn't mean that the output's going to be the same.
And I think sometimes we need to surround ourselves with people who maybe have that skill if you're really struggling with it. So you've got a really strong person in your office, you're working with a coach, an accountant, you're working with somebody who can help you interpret all those numbers and make some sense out of them.
Yeah, no shame in the game. You just got to know when to ask for help, right?
Yeah, put that white flag up and say help. And there's no shortage of people out there who can help you.
100%.
Yeah. Well, let's pick another profit leak. Since we've kind of talked about team a little bit, where's another one that you see people losing money?
It's funny. It's so losing actual money versus losing missed opportunity money.
Okay.
Meaning sometimes, like most people think, well, no, it's a revenue conversation, but it's really not a revenue conversation. And the number one thing that we see where our clients and contractors as a whole don't focus is 100% around the customer experience.
Oh, definitely.
Let me expand on that. How I handle the customer from the point they call my business to the point to where I deliver the services that they buy. If we look at every one of those as a stop-off point, every one of those are a system within a system. We call it the selling system. Like it's literally how you sell your services and how you deliver your service. No different than if you go down to a fast food place. If you're familiar with Chick-fil-A, their drive-through process is different than anybody else's, right? So they've got a process, how they take the order, how they line the order up. Well, the same is true in the service business. How you answer the phone is a process inside of your selling system. And what we find is that a lot of effort doesn't really get put into the systems, number one, on the phones. Number two, no sense of urgency. And number three, no training. So therefore, it is a profit leak because you've already paid to make the phone ring. It costs no extra money to do a great job on the phone. Have systems in place to ensure that what happens when we have a missed phone call? What do we do? There was a study that was done on speed to lead. 371% higher ROI when someone interacts immediately, either by text message, email, or some form of communication. Silence is literally expensive.
Wow. Say that again. That was amazing.
Silence is expensive. So not answering the phone and getting back, like you're going to be busy and there's going to be times where you can't answer the phone. So my question is, this is a nice little simple fix. You ready? Let it go to voicemail. But as a part of it going to voicemail, what if you explain to them, if you've received this message during normal business hours, it is due to a very high call volume. One of our professionals will get back with you as soon as possible. If you would like, you can send us a message at
Very nice.
Profit Leak plugged. There you go.
Very nice.
So you
We
don't
like that.
necessarily need to go spend a lot of money to make things happen. Just little bitty things, that adjustments you can make a massive difference in there. And so I like to do this, Diane. I run the math of, imagine you had that system in your place and it decreased the amount of missed calls and how many you actually book on the back end. Then in addition to that, having a process in the business where I can answer any and all objections on the phone. What I would consider to be, I'm skilled at it. I'm not the best, but I can meet the objective when someone says to me, why do you charge to come out? Or why can't you get here sooner? Or why can't you give me a price over the phone? All of those objections, those are things that profits are leaking through when you can't overcome those. So while it goes back to, if I can find a way to generate better revenue, I'm also fixing some profit because I've already had the money invested to make the phone ring. So what do I do at that point? I'm actually decreasing my marketing spend because I got the calls I need. I'm just not handling them well. And
Correct.
I could keep walking you through every part of the sales process of how you can make a massive difference. Because what I'd say to you is that one little 1% or 2% doesn't equal 1 or 2% to the bottom line necessarily, because every time you stack a performance increase, it compounds. It's not in addition to.
Correct.
So it's
Correct.
actually a multiplier to everything that you're doing.
It goes back to that concept of the power of 1% gains.
Yeah,
If you could fix 4, 5, 6 areas in your business by only 1 or maybe 2%, how powerful that is and what a big number that ends up being over time.
of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you are on fire. I'm loving
Thank,
this.
Thank you, Diane. I appreciate
Yeah.
this. I'm very passionate about this industry of what it's done for me and my family and the opportunities. And so I tell people often, don't confuse that I'm angry. I'm just really passionate about it. So if I get a little animated and a little carried away on a conversation, it is because I am just super passionate.
Me too, because I feel like the home service business owners, they to me are the backbone of our country. They employ so many people across the US. They keep our homes comfortable, they keep us safe, they keep us all operating as families and as businesses and stuff. So without them, we'd be hurting really bad. So
I
I'm
believe,
passionate about them as well.
and let me say this: I'm not a predictor of the future, but I will tell you that technology and AI are slowly dwindling away some industries, of which I believe it's only going to enhance what we do, because AI can't do things that we do. So the hands-on blue collar jobs today can only become better and more efficient through AI and things that we can do to create better customer experiences, therefore increasing revenues and increasing profits. I believe over the next 20, maybe 25 years, that those that are in this space, you're in a very, very good space. Like, look at crypto and you start looking at all industries are starting to collapse and tumble. The one industry that's not been impacted negatively has been the blue collar space.
That
And
you're very
I've heard multiple business people talk about this concept as well.
And I'll say they're an amazing group of people that we get to work with. I feel privileged to get to
Yeah,
work with them. Okay, so you ready for my really, really important question for you?
absolutely. Let's go.
Okay, can you share with our listeners a unique or a hidden profit leak that you've seen that most other people aren't talking about?
Wow, to put my finger on one, I think it's going to go back, Diane, to the individual business, but I'd like to share with you that reminds me of a story. We were in a training and I was talking about one little simple checklist. And Mike is the business owner. He's up in Buffalo, New York, and he texted me 30 minutes after the meeting that we had, and he said, "You're not going to believe it, Chris. You probably just saved me between $6,000 and $7,000." And this is the profit plug. It's multiple facets, but I'm just going to explain it for what it is. It's a truck inspection checklist.
Oh, you
Okay.
bet. Yes.
Okay. So here's what happens. We know the image is very important to the service business, right? So a part of the image is the vehicle image. Well, as a part of the vehicle image is also the mechanical operation of it, because when that truck's broke down on the side of the road, it can't produce revenue. Neither can the technician or salesperson produce revenue. So not only do you look at the hard cost, you look at the missed cost of opportunity by not having a fleet that's operating at peak performance. Now, here's what I would say. A checklist that includes mechanical operational items sounds silly. You know how many technicians will just drive it and then you take it in and they say, wow, this thing needed brakes 500 miles ago. And you ask the technician, hey, did you notice it making a sound? Yeah, I kind of felt like it was making a funny sound. And you find out now it's not just a brake job, it's a brake job and rotors and could have saved money on the front end. And this is what happened. One of the simple things is you check the oil. Now, Mike went out, checked the oil in his vehicle. Now, he's in Buffalo, so his service vehicles are a little different than what you might have, say, in Southwest Florida. Bigger trucks, diesels, so on and so forth. He said, Chris, I pulled the dipstick and it was empty. Empty.
Oh.
And he said, the fact that you mentioned that literally saved me between $6,000 and $7,000. Now, let me double down and say this. Think about what else it does for you. It creates pride in your fleet. You can take care of the little things like blinker missing, right? Tire needs to be replaced, horn not working. Think about all of the mechanical items that you will inspect that you can proactively address instead of it being Murphy's Law, which is always happens at the worst time, right? I'm out in the middle of an emergency call when the truck breaks down. So now it's not just a normal tow, it's an after hour. That's the complexity, right? In addition to that, and I'll say this, Diane, in my business, all of my vehicles were laid out the same. All my service vehicles, we had a layout of how we lay out all the materials. So every single truck was stocked the exact same way. It was a number and a letter layout. And so because of that, as a part of, and this is the profit plug, as a part of that, every year we would do inventory on our trucks. You know what happens when you do that? You got to write off all the shrinkage, right? And so what we actually found was we started operating all of our vehicles like they were warehouses, and we just started implementing cycle counts. So we would cycle count 5 bins every week, 4 bins every week, depending on the amount of material in each bin. Because remember, all of them are the exact same in the same place on the truck. We pulled overages off and then restocked underages, and our shrinkage that we were writing at the end of the year continued to get smaller and smaller, all because of why? We had a truck inspection process. Our truck inspection process looked at cleanliness, mechanical, and it included inventory. So there you go. I know it wasn't big and exciting, but that one little thing can make a massive difference in a business.
Well, and you multiply that over a fleet, 10, 15, 20, 30 trucks, 40, 50 trucks. And
Yeah,
that 6,000 savings starts multiplying and it becomes a big one.
of course.
Yes, I love those small ones because over time they multiply and they become big profit leaks for somebody.
Yeah, that business today, by the way, when I sold, we were at a run rate of 30 million. We finished the year at 18, run rate of 30 on a rolling 12. What I'd say to you though, that business will do 75 million this year.
Wow.
They have a lot of vehicles in their fleet.
Yes. A lot of places for something to go wrong.
Yes.
Because employees
absolutely.
don't take the same pride of ownership that we do as a business owner.
Of course
They
not.
just don't. So, yeah. Wow. That was great. Thank you for sharing that. I will definitely add that to my list of unique hidden profit leaks.
Awesome.
Yeah, I always love it when somebody gives me a new one they hadn't really thought about before.
Well, I don't know that that would be necessarily a cool one, but certainly is one that's applicable
And it
to service
applies,
business.
yeah, it applies whether you're a smaller business or a larger one. Even if you only have one truck, you can
Absolutely.
still utilize that as a hidden profit leak that we can plug.
Absolutely.
You bet. Well, thank you so much, Chris, for being with us. You shared some amazing information, And I just want to thank you for taking your time and coming and sharing with us.
My pleasure, Diane.
Yes. I'm going to say that's a wrap for this episode of the Profitable Home Services Podcast. Remember, it's not how much money you make, but it's how much you keep. All about that bottom line net profit dollar amount, or that net profit percentage amount. Go ahead and grab a free digital copy of my book, Your Path to Profit. You can see it right there behind my head. In there, I share 9 profit boosting tactics that will transform your service business. You can pick that up at yourpathtoprofitbooks.com. And Chris, if you'll share with our listeners where they can learn more about Blue Collar Success Group.
Thank you, Diane. Our web address is www.thebluecollarsuccessgroup.com, thebluecollarsuccessgroup.com, or we can be reached at 838-2MY-BCSG, and we'll be glad to answer any questions. Once again, it's 838-2MY-BCSG.
Thank you so much, Chris. And I will tell you that I enjoy all the emails that you send out, as I am on your newsletter list. And
awesome.
I always learn something as you share information with others. So thank you for being such a giver out there in this community.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Yes. Thank you again. And we'll call this a wrap.
Perfect. Thank you. Take care.